Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gills, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, glad to have you here. Oh look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the morning grind. So good to see you. So Theo is here, and so is BGD. Welcome. Great to see you. It has been it was a good night last night. I got all of my let me start over. My prototype action figures based behind me. You can see that. So now I'm not afraid of them falling over if I have to move them around or move them over here and show them off on stream, because they're fragile, because those are the prototypes and they're made of resin, but they are all ready to go. I also got my advanced Hero Quest figures based, and so they are ready for priming today. So I might put out a call on the Ravenkeep Discord, or a reminder on the Ravenkeep Discord, and also the Instagram stories, so that everybody can be remembering to prime their miniatures if they want to be able to paint some more. I'll probably be painting some more on Friday. We had the idea that maybe the solo quests for Hero Quests, the Frozen Horror, and then Mage of the Mirror, and then Advanced Hero Quest should wrap up Dinner and a Board Game Season 2. So I'm trying to make that happen. Although I did get up late today because apparently my body needed it, because when I woke up, I was very sore. I'm having difficulty walking around today because of the introduction of running into the afternoon adventure. So we're going to have to see how that goes. So woke up late and now having difficulty moving. So we'll have to see what I can do today. Tonight, let me remind you, tonight what we're doing for a live stream is tonight, Tuesday, is supposed to be our video gaming day. And has anyone ever played the game Vagxanadu? That was an NES game. Vagxanadu was my introduction to fantasy video gaming. Played it all the time as a kid. So I got an NES emulator. We're going to go on a fantasy adventure. I've got the original NES controller hooked up to my computer. And so I'm actually planning on making it a bit longer stream because, yes, I've got things to do. But on the other hand, I want to have some fun. And I want to see if I sit down for a good chunk of time, if I can play through Vagxanadu, or at least get, how far can I get into it? So I'm going to do that tonight. I'm not sure what I'm going to be starting, but hey, I'll post it out to the Discord channel, and of course, watch here on YouTube and things like that, and you'll see. So hopefully we will have a good time tonight, having a retro fantasy adventure today. Let's see. Let's go to the morning messages. Our main topic is going to be Fated Edge. On Tuesdays on the morning grind, we are working on RPG and game design rules and things like that. So this is our third episode that's focused on Fated Edge, and we're going to be looking at the action resolution mechanic today. So we talked about the dice. We talked about breaking all the dice down mathematically, or at least what I was trying to do statistically with the dice last time. This time we'll be looking at what the action resolution mechanic actually is. Let's go to the morning messages really quick first. The Morning Grind is brought to you by World Anvil. For all the writers out there, World Anvil has all the tools to help you write, organize, present, and publish rich settings with complex characters. Write, world build, and manage your story all in a single platform. Use the code MORNINGGRIND to get 40% off yearly subscriptions. And thank you for being here with me live on The Morning Grind. And if you're watching on replay, welcome to you as well. It's great to have you here. If you're enjoying The Morning Grind, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. It will really help the channel grow, and I would be very thankful. We also have the Ravenkeep Discord server you can join if you would like to be a part of the community. All right, that's what you need to know. Let's get to the main topic. Let me throw in the Ravenkeep Discord invite link, even though I've got lots of things to say in there. So hopefully this afternoon, oh, we got rain coming in. Hopefully that means that I won't lose power or internet, but I hear it raining right now. Ravenkeep Discord invite. All right, so let's get to the main topic, which is diving into Fated Edge. So I've been trying to build this out. Let me pull up my window here. I've been trying to build this out in the same way that we've been basically talking about RPGs. And what do we need to know? Here are our dice scripts. We can check those out for on any dice. But you know, the things that we like to look at, I'm building this out in Scrivener. I use that a lot for my long form writing. So I've been trying to figure out, okay, so what do we do when we look at an RPG? We want to know what is its main purpose and what is it trying to do. And then we try to take a look at a character sheet and try to see, from its statistics, what exactly are we supposed to be doing? So I'm kind of organizing and structuring this book in that way. So we would have something about an about, and then we would have a character sheet that is explained. And then we like an example of play. I haven't written that yet, but that's the kind of direction that we go to. But then after that, we get to the main part that we're talking about today, which is the first thing I started kind of writing out, which is the action resolution system. So after that, we want to talk about how do we actually play the game. And by playing the game, we on this stream have been talking about how do we actually take an action. And hopefully that is in a unified way. And that was a goal of this RPG, was to have a unified action resolution system, which means that everything that you want to do, whether that's opening a door or bashing in a door, picking a lock, even attacking a monster, casting a spell, all of that goes through a single action resolution mechanic instead of having a different mechanic for each one of those actions, which requires you to remember them all or look them up in the rule book. If you have the core action resolution mechanic down, then you just apply it in every situation that you are in. So that's why I don't have like character creation next or something like that. Here's your character sheet, and then here's what it looks like. But then how you actually take an action? How do you change something in the world? And I wanted to have an action overview. I wanted to have a one-page summary that overviews in kind of bullet point format exactly how you take an action. That way you can reference it. It's right there in the book. And then the next thing is deeper explanations of those things. But I wanted to have a one page, at least this is one page on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I was making sure that at a format that I might want to use, it's one page. So you just look at it and say, here is how this game is played. So, okay, action resolution, action overview. Okay, the basic game mechanic in Fated Edge is the action resolution system. A correctly specified action must include the outcome the character is trying to bring about and how the character will attempt to bring it about. To resolve the action, use the following procedure. All right, so we're connecting what is the character trying to do with this outcome idea, and then how the character is attempting to do it, right? You got to have both of those things. The game master, and I'm just using the term game master here because it's generic. I don't really see the need to come up with some special name for the game master. So the game master, the GM. The game master or the GM determines if the action is impossible, automatic, or only possibly successful. If it is only possibly successful, the player must make a check to determine the success or failure of the action. So on the other hand, there's a lot of this that isn't completely brand new or anything like that. And I believe Andrew was talking about this, that we don't want to value uniqueness just for the sake of valuing uniqueness. If there are mechanics that work and ideas that work, then great, let's adopt those. And especially, I don't want it to be completely unfamiliar to somebody who is sitting down to play an RPG. So, make a check. When a check is necessary, the GM determines which ability governs the check. All right? And I haven't completely nailed down the abilities yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'm about 90% of the way there. So your character sheet is going to have abilities on it, and they are going to have, and I think they're only going to be only four different abilities, and these govern all the different actions that you could have. So strength, dexterity, intelligence, or presence. The abilities govern the way that your character can interact and change the world, right? So whenever you are trying to interact with or change the world, there are only so many ways that a human or humanoid kind of creature can do that, and that is with their strength, their dexterity, their intelligence, or their presence. This one, the name might change here. I've also considered bearing here, but this one has to do with social things. So strength, you're trying to change the world with something about your brawn, physical mass, right? Dexterity has to do with using your body in some way in order to change something about the world, moving and maneuvering. Intelligence, that's your raw analytical capability. And then your presence is used in social situations when you are trying to change someone's mind, or you're trying to manipulate or otherwise interact with somebody socially, another thinking being, basically. And that can include animals as well. So if you're trying to interact with animals, a calm animal or whatever that is, animal handling, presence would govern that as well. I think those are the four big ways that human beings and other human-like creatures from fantasy and sci-fi interact with the world. And, a lot of things will have to do with dexterity and intelligence. But that's because I think as humans, dexterity, some people have said, is overvalued in Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe it is. I've seen some people shifting some of the value of dexterity over to wisdom in some of the RPGs I've been looking at. So it's possible in any particular game design that it might be. But on the other hand, dexterity and intelligence are useful. Dexterity and intelligence, a lot of things that I do in life around what I do have to do with either my dexterity or my intelligence or my presence. Strength is arguably less useful. Now, if you're a barbarian warrior in fantasy gaming and stuff like that, strength becomes much more useful. But on the other hand, how many times in today's world do I have to, or in general everyday life, do I have to pass a strength check? Probably not. Not very often at all. But that puts all actions through these 4 attributes, right? And dexterity and intelligence are going to be important. So these govern the check. I wanted to be sure that all actions you could possibly take in the world are governed by one of these abilities. And I didn't want there to be like 40 abilities or something like that. Every action is governed by one of these abilities. If a character has a skill that is applicable to the action being undertaken, add the skill's bonus to the ability score. And actually, I might include the word proficiency here. There are several different levels of proficiency. I was just working with that yesterday. But if you happen to have a skill that is applicable to the action being undertaken, add the skill's proficiency bonus to the ability score. A maximum of 1 skill may be used per check. The character's ability score plus the bonus skill, when applicable, is the character's base competence. So this idea becomes important at completing the action. So I didn't want this to be, I tried when I was looking at this originally, I really thought it would be interesting to always have a combination of an ability plus a skill. So you've got a list of abilities and you've got a list of skills. And then you're always cross-referencing an ability with a skill and putting those 2 things together. And that comes up with something about your base competence. But I realized that although I thought that it was rather easy to come up with a list of abilities that would govern everything that could be done in the world, it was much more difficult to come up with a list of skills that could govern everything that could be done in the world. And plus, this is intended to be a generic system, so your skills would have to shift anyway, depending on what world you're in, right? Your skills in a sci-fi world would be different from a fantasy world or whatever. And I didn't like the idea of coming up with a comprehensive list of skills anyway, because people may have different ideas for skills that apply in different situations. A game master may have different ideas for skills. So I think the much better way to do it, and this is, I think, the way that 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is supposed to work, even though in practice, very few people play it this way. In practice, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you are supposed to make an ability check. And only sometimes does your character have proficiency in a skill, which helps you out with that ability check. And there is that weird sidebar or box of text in the 5th edition PHB that does say, hey, sometimes your skill proficiency may apply to something else. Like, if you're trying to, if your attack bonus or something like that, you're good with weapons, but now you're trying to identify a weapon or discover how well it's well made. Well, instead of using dexterity to attack or whatever, apply your proficiency bonus to intelligence in order to make that judgment call. Unfortunately, a lot of people in Dungeons & Dragons always look to the skill list. Oh, let me look at the skill roll and see if I've got a skill that's associated with it, or do I not? Oh, I don't have that skill. Maybe I can't do it. Whereas that's not what's supposed to happen. I think what confuses players is the fact that there's that giant list of proficiency, possible skills that you could be proficient in, that draws players' attention more than it should. The players should be looking at ability scores. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, that sounds like this kind of ability check. The game master might tell them. And then they should look and see if they have something that is proficient, that they are proficient in, that would help them out. So I've seen revised character sheets for 5th edition that do not have all of those skills listed out. They just have a place that says proficiencies and then just lists what the character is proficient in. That's the way I would do that here. So there's going to be no major, list, and you're especially not going to see things on your character sheet that you're not proficient in or that you can't do. You're going to have your ability scores, which govern how you do something, and then you're going to have some skill proficiencies, which can have a couple of different levels of proficiency. And if one of these happens to apply, then you add your ability to your proficiency bonus, and that tells you your base competence. Now, remember, one of the major things that we were talking about is that last time that we needed to swap. We needed to swap the range of the D20 roll. Like if we're talking Dungeons and Dragons, one of our problems that we were trying to make sure that we have an understanding of how good our characters are at different things. And in order to do that, after all of the dice analysis that we did, we realized we need to swap the range of the random element with the static element. So we're going to have rather large static elements, and then we're going to have a much smaller range of random element in here. So when you add those together, this is your base competence at completing that action. And that base competence is going to tell you how good you are at something and whether or not you should be able to easily or more have more difficulty at completing easy, hard, very hard tasks, whatever. Ability plus skill, if relevant, equals base competence in whatever it is you're doing. And that should tell you a lot about how good you are and what kind of actions you should expect to be able to complete. BGD says, I think it's always okay to compose a relatively comprehensive list of RPG skills that cover the basic and genre-specific tasks, and then add work your GM to define new skills for proficiency. Yeah, I agree. And I want to put in a list of sample skills, especially in this, which is intended to be a generic system. And then when I'm working on world books, I can put in other skills as well. But the key word exactly is what you're saying here, relatively comprehensive. That way it is not, I'm not saying that everything has to come through this skill list. So here's your list of suggested skills, and then also suggested skills that characters of certain types might be proficient in, right? So I haven't come up with how many different proficiencies you're going to have, but it's also not going to be all that many. Just a small handful that hey, these are the things you're extra good at for some reason, so look at these. So when you're trying to build out character archetypes or something like that, these are the kinds of proficiencies, kind of skills that people are proficient in this type of character. But yeah, but you see, if I was actually trying to say that everything comes through a skill and an ability and a skill, and it's required that you have both of those every time you try to connect an action, then I would have to make sure that the skill lists, that more than the skill lists covers everything that can be done, but that whatever is on the player's sheet covers everything that can be done. Because if every time you take an action, you must combine an ability and a skill, that means that every time a character takes an action in the game, the player would have to look at the character sheet and would have to be able to combine an ability and a skill in order to complete an action, because everything they should be able to do should be a combination of an ability and a skill. And I feel like when the abilities are abstract enough that I think you can always make that happen. But when you get into skills, there's going to be a lot of questions at the table. Oh, is it this skill? Is it that skill? Maybe I don't know if this applies or not, but I've got to have one. Here, if it doesn't apply, if you're not sure if it applies, I don't think this really applies here. That's fine. You don't have to have a skill bonus in order to complete the action. You just leave it off. Okay, so now we have this base competence at completing a skill, an action. Okay, so then the GM determines the action's difficulty. Difficulties are associated with a number called a target. Difficulties are associated with a number called a target. The player must obtain on the check for the action to be successful. So we're just trying to roll target numbers here. Static obstacles, such as a pit to be jumped or a wall to be climbed, will have a set target depending on how great an obstacle is intended to present. If the character's action is directly opposed by another character, such as when trying to attack another person or get around them to move through a doorway, the action's target is determined by that character's related resistance. All right. So the players are going to have control over their own character, and they're going to have control over what is on their character sheet. So during character creation, if they went through character creation, then they could control what their abilities are, and they can control what type of skills they're proficient in. The game master will be controlling the difficulties of everything else in the world, like static targets and things like this, like jumping over the pit and things like that. I love active defense, but we're gonna have to talk about that in a specific episode. But, and in fact, I want to do a video specifically breaking down kind of the math on active defense from the statistics perspective. And I think it's something that's going to have to be given up. From the game design perspective, I think that it's going to go more smoothly if that's given up. So the actions target, so I have these things called resistances, which are basically going to become the AC, the armor class, for a bunch of different abilities if someone is trying to do something to you. Because if your abilities, if you're looking at your character sheet and you see your abilities are how you affect the world. I'm trying to change something about the world. I'm trying to influence something about the world. So strength, intelligence, dexterity, and presence. Those things help you affect the world. But at other times, you want to stop the world from affecting you. The world is going to try to make you do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do, or, put a spearhead into you or something like that you'd rather not have happen. Well, how good are you at preventing the world from affecting you? That's what I'm calling resistances at the moment. Okay, so then the game master determines if the action is being undertaken in adventuring conditions or not. In non-adventuring conditions, add 5 to the character's base competence. This number is the character's normal expected competence for completing the action. So if it's not adventuring conditions, you get a 5 bonus. You get your ability, your ability score, plus your skill, if one is relevant, plus a 5 in non-adventuring conditions. That gets you your normal expected competence for the action. In adventuring conditions, you will not automatically receive that additional 5. Instead, he or she must roll the edge dice, which we talked about a lot in the last time we looked at Fated Edge. These edge dice generate a number between 0 and 5, and you add the result to the base competence. And just as a refresher, those 0 to 5 numbers are generated according to a very specific distribution. So if you, as a refresher, and if you weren't here for the other one, let me show you that. Let me remove that and stop that. But then I will put up this new screen. These 0 to 5 are being generated in this very specific distribution. That it's that there's a 30% chance you're going to be rolling a 0. So you're probably going to be rolling close to your base competence, right? And then you might roll a 1, 25% chance, 20% chance. Basically, you roll a 2, 14% chance you'll roll a 3, 8% chance you'll roll a 4, and then close to a 3% chance that you will roll a 5. So you get the 5 automatically in non-adventuring conditions, but in adventuring conditions, you are operating on the edge. Hence the name of this system. You've got to roll to get that 5. So that is where we are going with these edge dice. Whoop. Action overview. Okay. So from the game design perspective, it seemed to make sense. I originally was saying, well, what's on your character sheet should be your normal expected competence. You just look down and you see, how good am I supposed to be? But then if you are in adventuring conditions, you may do less well. You may not do as well as that. That seems to work from a perspective of how you might expect this to be working in the world. That seems to work well. You look down at your character sheet. In non-adventuring conditions, this is how well I do. This is how good I am, because that was one of the purposes of the game design. How good am I? I want to know when I look at this character sheet. But then in adventuring conditions, I may not do as well as that. So it would make sense to take the edge dice and then subtract that. You might do as well as badly as 5 less than that. So originally I was working with subtraction. But you hear everybody say they don't like subtraction, that games are better if you're adding something, if you're not subtracting something. So from a game design perspective, it does seem like addition is better than subtraction, making people do addition rather than subtraction. But on the other hand, what I thought was a more compelling game design idea to go with this is that I want players to be rolling to see if they can do better, right? I can see there being resistance from a player side of things to say, hey, this is my skill, this is my competence level, but roll the dice and see how much worse you do, because you're going to have to be subtracting something with dice. That means the dice are always taking something away from you, and people don't like it when things are taken away from them. So instead, I decided to go with this distinction here with the adventuring conditions and non-adventuring conditions, and saying that, hey, here's your base competence. Non-adventuring conditions, take a +5 bonus. In adventuring conditions, roll to see how much better you do. See how much of that +5 you get. That way the dice are giving you something rather than taking something away. And I think that was a better way for the game to run. So even though it means that in non-adventuring conditions, you look at your character sheet and still have to add a +5. Well, in non-adventuring conditions, I can do better than that. I can do 5 better than that. That means that the dice are giving you something during gameplay rather than taking them away, and I think that's the better choice. Let's see. BGD, it may have been you who was talking about character choice. And I know I was talking on Twitter about this as well, I think. But I think we talked about it here as well. When we were talking about what do we want this game to be about? Oh, yeah, because we talked about what if there were no dice and you just always knew whether you were going to be successful or not. And so there wasn't the random element. Then the game would become about making good choices. And the analogy here was chess, right? And we said, maybe we don't want that. Maybe we want there to be a random element where that at least possible element of excitement comes from. Maybe not all elements, maybe not all things are going to be able to be accomplished. But I do want to bias the game toward making good decisions. Do I want to have a very random game, which is arguably something like Dungeons & Dragons 5e, when you're rolling this 20-sided die and adding relatively small static modifiers to it? Because that's a much more random game. That's a game about rolling dice. Or do I want it to be a game more about good decisions? It's not a perfect game, because some people always say, well, then go play something that doesn't have dice in it or randomness at all. Like, that's not the purpose. I want there to be some. I want there to be that element, especially when characters are operating at the edge of their competence. But on the other hand, I do want to bias the game toward good decisions by the players, right? Do I want this to be more a game about good decision making? And if you make good decision making, then you can succeed. Or do I want this to be more about, well, how well do you roll dice? I'm trying to bias this in the direction of this is a game about good decision making. Make good decisions, get the reward. Okay, so the game master, we just went over this. Okay, so right here. So we're adding in the edge dice in adventuring conditions. Oh, and I should say as well, I think the non-adventuring conditions are important, because this is stuff that can be done away from the table when you don't have to have a game master adjudicating something and adjudicating your dice rolls. Like in something like downtime. So say that we want to have downtime, I think, but this is a perfect example of when I think non-adventuring conditions come up and we shouldn't have to be relying on dice. Because in most of the game, when you're actually sitting down there playing the game, I would say during a large chunk of the game, you're going to be in adventuring conditions. So you're going to be rolling dice, and everybody's going to be there. But let's say that we're going to do downtime and somebody's going to be forging a sword, somebody's going to be researching a spell, or whatever that is. Well, why take up game time in order to adjudicate downtime and things like that? The characters or the players should be able to adjudicate that themselves, I think. And that comes from my experience, because this game, I'm intentionally trying to be very session focused. What's happening during this session? It needs to be high adventure, right? I want to have as much adventure and action as happening during the particular session as I possibly can. And that does not include adjudicating downtime, because I played games where, okay, we use downtime And I think there's a lot of advantages to using downtime. I mean, there's stuff about it, except for it requires rolls. And so the game master has to adjudicate that. And so we sit down, everybody sits down, finally ready to play, we're all at the table. And the first thing we do is adjudicate downtime for a large chunk of time. You know, that can take up a large chunk of your time. Now, in this case, we were playing for like 8-hour sessions. So maybe that was fine. But if you're only playing a 2-hour or 3-hour session, taking up a chunk of that time to adjudicate your downtime isn't all that great. So I think. So in non-adventuring conditions, characters just know their normal expected competence and say, hey, I'm trying to forge this sword. I've got the materials, I've got the gold, whatever, I've got the time, and I do have the skill. So they can just report that, hey, I took this metal and I forged it into this sword. You could verify that because the character would have had the materials, the correct skill level, and now you've got the sword, right? And you don't have to worry about adjudicating that in front of a game master because no roll is required. Oh, Pornbot, let's breathe. Actually, I don't think we took a breath this morning. We should have. So this is a great opportunity. Thank you for the reminder, Pornbot. Breathe in deeply. Deep inhale, full exhale. I need that this morning. And also drink. Let me ban the Pornbot. BGD says, totally agree with you about the benefits of having player decisions matter, although this can be delivered in the game's guidance on adventure design as well as in its dice mechanics. Yes, it can be. It can be. My concern about the dice situation there is that that in very random games, say you do make the right decisions as far as your game's guidance goes and adventure design goes. They've made all the right decisions. They're supposedly, I mean, they have set up the situation so that the characters who are most skilled at certain things are doing those tasks that are required. So you're doing a good job matching up the task with the different skills of all the different characters. And then you've got situations where you're like, yes, you should be able to do that because you are an expert rogue or whatever. And then you lose the game because that expert rogue flubbed a die roll that they were supposed to be able to accomplish. You've got a really random element. So I want the dice mechanics to support that good design. I don't, if the characters set up, if the game master has set that up and then the characters have made all good choices, then I don't want just a pure random element to screw them over. Because that's a change in my game design philosophy in general. I've seen some games, the ones that I've designed as well, that because I like dice, rolling dice and things like that too. But I've seen situations where I'm like, okay, that player right there, and I'm talking about just in a general board game situation, that player made all of the right decisions. They managed everything correctly. They did everything they were supposed to do. But then in the last moment, because of a dice roll that went completely the wrong way for them in a terrible way, all of a sudden everything is collapsing. And is that good or is that bad? Some people will love that. Some people will love that. But as I was looking at the table when I was seeing that being played, I was like, nope, that person should have just won the game. That person was on the verge of winning the game because they had made all of the correct decisions and done so well. That player should have won the game. That dice roll that all of a sudden negated 2 hours of planning, and doing well on his part, that all of a sudden threw that. I decided I didn't like that. BGD also says the balance between random chance and the benefits of good strategy is key. Random things happen in real life, regardless of the quality of our decisions, and it makes a good game when it is modeled. The balance between random chance. Well, that's what I was talking about. What is our balance between our random chance, or I can call this variables that we are not accounting for, because we're going to account for some variables here in the game, but then we can't account for everything, and that's why we roll dice. And I'm trying to balance things in favor of good strategy. So, 6, the player and GM determine if there are any situations, conditions, circumstances, or traits that make this attempt at the action easier or harder. In non-adventuring conditions, positive and negative circumstances provide a 2 or -2 respectively. in adventuring conditions, a bonus die or a penalty die will be rolled for each positive or negative circumstance, respectively. So bonus dice provide a 0 to 2, and then penalty dice provide a 0 to -2. Okay. And they do this in a specific distribution as well. So I think I have that over here. Well, okay. So you can see, is this the way that I ultimately went for it? I think this may not, I think I may have changed this a little bit, but I think I was working with D8s. I think I was working with D8s to say there's a chance that you're going to get 0. There's a chance you're going to get all the way to the 2, but most of the time it's going to provide something like a +1 to you. So I think this changed a little bit, but it's not just a flat distribution between zeros and 0, 1, or 2. There is a bias toward ones. The 2s are uncommon, but then there's a chance the 0 will also show. No more than 3 positive or negative circumstances may be applied to a single check. Other potential positive or negative circumstances are disregarded. These results are added to the check. Their results are added to the check. So we've got the comparison, and I think this is pretty standard, but I'm trying to make this very defined. We've got the things the character control, the player can control, rather, which is the abilities and the skills. So those are the things the character has in the bag going into whatever we're doing. Then we've got things that the game master controls, which is like the difficulty of jumping over the pit, right? And then we've got circumstances which might make things easier or harder, which I think are like aspects in Fate. These are things that will be sitting on the table. Oh, you're in complete darkness. Okay, well, there's a penalty die to trying to climb this wall or whatever. I tried to put a cap on this by saying no more than 3 positive or negative circumstances can be applied to a single check. Then you just cap out. So that way we're not endlessly sitting there at the table trying to, a player isn't endlessly sitting there trying to come up with why different things are actually advantageous. Once you've got 3, oh, yep, here's an advantage, here's a possible advantage, here's an advantage, here's a disadvantage, you're done, right? You don't try to come up with 5 or 6. That's like trying to come up with all of the things in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that might give you +1 or -1 or whatever, you know, and tallying all of those things up. Eventually, you just cap out. So rather than trying to go endlessly into that, I just went with 3 positive or 3 negatives, and that's what you got. I was trying to, I went with the +2 and the -2 here, even though that means that you can get up to an additional +6 or -6, right? So it doesn't neatly fall on a 5. I was trying to make it neatly fall on a 5 if I could, because I've been working on difficulties in steps of 5, and the base competence gets you a +5, and so the penalty dice, the edge dice also generate a number between 1 and 5. So I was trying to figure that out with the bonus and penalty dice, but I was having to use fractional numbers on dice, and I was like, that's inelegant. I don't want to have fractional numbers on dice. So a plus or -2, though, that's easy to remember. And hey, if you're rolling 3 of them, it does mean that you can exceed the edge dice by 1. You could get 6 on it. That's really not a big deal because it's unlikely that you would roll all 2s. You could, and if you do, then hey, more power to you. And also, if you really want to extend your skill, then you've got to roll a 5 on the edge dice and then all 2s as well. So maybe you can do it. So that does add back in the fun dice rolling element, because some people were like, hey, I want to be able to do this. I want to make the roll. Okay, well, now here's a way that you can make the roll if you got your edge dice and you have 3 positive circumstances. And then you could make this roll and potentially get 11 better than your base competence. But critically, these bonus dice should be coming from decisions the characters are making. I need a bonus die. So this is like creating advantages in Fate, right? You don't just, there might be some circumstances out there on the table that give you a bonus die. I mean, that's possible. But I want the characters to be able to get bonus dice from making good decisions. They're preparing well to accomplish some type of obstacle that they are dealing with, right? So if they come up with different ways, like creating advantages in fate that are going to give them bonuses, then yes, they've done something. They've made good decisions that are going to allow them to roll this bonus die. And likewise, it is possible for you to actually do worse than your numbers state. So it is possible. But the reason that it would be possible is because if you are deliberately choosing to take this action in the face of bad circumstances, which are making you roll penalty dice. So that would be a decision of the player. Well, you can try this, but you don't have enough, bonus dice to negate the penalty dice, and this is going to be a much more difficult situation for you. The player can say, I'm going to roll anyway. All right, fine, no problem, roll anyway. But that's a decision of the player that I'm doing this in the face of a whole bunch of penalties, and this is a decision of the player. I'm going to get more bonuses. I'm going to be able to roll higher because of decisions I made that are actually improving the character's chance. So then bonus dice and penalty dice cancel one another out. That way we're not trying to add up a whole bunch of different numbers here. For example, one negative circumstance and one positive circumstance result in rolling neither a bonus or a penalty die. Therefore, a player will never roll both bonus and penalty dice at the same time. So they're canceling out at the level of dice. If there are two things that can make this easier and two things that can make this harder, then just roll without the bonus and penalty dice. And by the way, I think that this is important because I think that the inclusion of a 0 on the bonus and penalty dice is very important in making this do what I want it to do. I think it has two effects. The first is that it should make game masters more okay with accepting things that could potentially be a bonus for the player. If the player says, oh, wait, hey, this right over here, this should give me a bonus to my roll. Well, if it always did give a bonus, then the game master might want to adjudicate it more highly. Or likewise, it might also make the players more accepting of a penalty die. Because even the penalty, the game master says, well, this is going to give you a penalty. And the player's like, well, oh, is it? Like, really? Do we really have to, I got to think about that. Maybe I've got an argument to come back, especially if the penalty die always gave you a penalty. But it's not the case. So if it's possible that something could give you a bonus, then roll the die. Or if it's possible that something would give you a penalty, okay, then roll the die. Because in practice, it might not actually influence you at all. That die may come up as a 0. So you can be a bit more free form at the table with penalties or bonuses or penalty and bonus dice, because you're not saying that you are actually penalizing or helping the player, right? So that should allow this to move faster. This is also the presence of the 0 on the bonus and penalty dice also are what should allow this to not have to use a meta currency system. Okay, so in Fate, like we've talked about in a couple of different times, in order to activate a bonus, okay, so you create your advantage. So that's like creating a situation where you would warrant a bonus die. Okay, and if you create that advantage, you do get one free invoke. But then otherwise, if you want to use it and other players want to use it, you're having to put down fate coins, right? You're having to actually use your fate points in order to activate that advantage, or some other advantage that you didn't create but is present in the environment, or whatever it is that you're trying to use in the environment. We've talked about fire a lot. The room is on fire, so I'm going to use that to my advantage when I'm making an attack against this person because I'm going to try to drive them toward the fire. Okay, well then pay a fate point. Because you're paying that fate point, that circumstance, that aspect automatically confers a bonus. It's a flat +2 bonus, and that is in what I'm calling adventuring conditions here. You get that +2 bonus or a reroll. So something good is going to happen to you because you paid out the meta currency. You paid something, so you got to get something in return. That's a +2 automatically, right? So, if you're paying something, so my philosophy was, if you're paying something, then you should get the reward immediately, right? You should definitely get that. But the flip side to that is that since it always matters, since the room being on fire, always matters. Let me say this again. So if you pay something, you should get something back. Okay. But if the something in the environment is always potentially relevant, potentially is the key word here, then you shouldn't always have to pay something in order to activate it. We've talked about that a lot. So if the room is on fire and you're trying to drive people toward the fire, you could just say, that's what I'm trying to do, so I'm going to take the bonus die. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually going to help you in that particular circumstance. So don't require the player to have to pay something. Just say, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to add this to the roll. And that, I think, is the reason why this system works. Because I was looking at Cortex quite a bit in this regard. Because Cortex does have a meta currency in it, but it doesn't use the meta currency for situations like this, right? So in Cortex, you are assembling a dice pool of some core attributes, but then also anything else that you think might help you in order to accomplish a task. So if you think something is relevant and the game master agrees, hey, now wait a minute, I'm trying to cast this magic spell and I have this magic staff that's full of magic energy. The magic staff should help me cast the spell, right? Okay, well then add its die to your dice pool. Things like that. Hey, wait a minute, isn't there like magical energy flowing up from magic crystals in this room? Shouldn't that help me cast the magic spell? Yeah, maybe it should. So add the dice of the magic energy above you to your dice pool. It allows you to do that and allows you to assemble this large dice pool because all of those dice are not necessarily going to help you. When they show up, when you roll them, all of those dice are not actually going to help you complete the task. At the end of the day, you pick your one die that's going to help you meet your target number. No, excuse me, your two dice that are going to help you meet the target number, and then you're going to pick one of your effect dice. So it doesn't matter if you rolled 8 dice. You're going to be picking 3 dice that are actually going to help you adjudicate the action. So sure, that's going to help you roll larger, but the magic staff die might have rolled a 1. And so when you're looking at all those dice, okay, the magic staff didn't actually help me. That rolled a 1 in this particular time, right? So it does this because it allows you to assemble all those dice because they don't always all help you on your die roll. In Fate, they would all be giving you a flat bonus, like a +2. But in this, in Cortex, some of them may not be helping you. That's why it allows them all to be considered. And I like that. And so that's why I used this mechanic here as well. What do we think about that? Okay, in non-adventuring conditions, if the player's normal expected competence, plus or minus any situational modifiers, and that's which these are coming from. Oh wait, excuse me. No. This is non-adventuring conditions. So in non-adventuring conditions, your normal expected competence plus or minus any situational modifiers, and those should be plus or minus 2 because you're not rolling in non-adventuring conditions, is equal to or more than the action's target, the action is successful. In adventuring conditions, if the character's base competence plus the roll of an edge die plus or minus the rolls of any bonus or penalty dice equal to or exceed the target's number, the action is successful. So there we go. That is our basic action resolution mechanic. Successful actions bring about the desired outcome. Otherwise, the action fails, and the outcome is important here because the outcome is what is specified at the very beginning. A correctly specified action must include the outcome. So what is the character actually trying to do, and how are they trying to bring it about? Success brings about the desired outcome. Otherwise, the action fails, the desired outcome does not occur, and the character may suffer consequences. So there we go. That is the core action resolution system. Always coming through an ability score. You may or may not have a skill that is relevant, and then you may or may not have situational modifiers which give you this. What do you think? I'm interested in knowing. I'm trying to. I don't know if I'm going to have meta currency yet, but I'm trying to. I'm trying to not make the things in the world rely on meta currency to operate, and that's a big difference between Fate and Cortex. I think, for at least its action resolution mechanic, and I think I figured out why Cortex can have that in the action resolution mechanic. It's because everything that's relevant may not actually apply in a given situation. And I think that even the Nose Plays, things that Nose Plays was talking about that he wants some things to have narrative influence, like some kind of background information or something like that could have narrative influence. I'm perfectly fine with that kind of stuff also being a bonus die. Hey, wait a minute. I want to climb this. I want to climb this wall. Wasn't that an example we used at some point that the Nose Plays liked? I want to climb this wall. Well, I do have like thieving contacts. And so the thieving contacts may have told me that, hey, here is how you climb this wall. Here's where the special handholds are that we found. If you're trying to climb this wall, make sure you do it in this way. So I've got thieving contacts who have probably been over this wall before, and they probably told me some secrets about it. Okay, bonus die. Okay, take a bonus die. That could be a reason to accept a bonus die as well. So that's my current thinking. So that actually fits. Basically, that is that's 561 words. That action overview right there. Now from there, each one of these things can be explained in more detail. But that would be the action overview. If you had looked at what we're trying to do with Fated Edge, as far as the structure of the game structure of the book goes, if you looked at what I'm trying to do, which I'm still writing, you had been over a character sheet, looked at an example of play, and then read your action overview. That should be enough to get you to the table and start playing, which is basically what we've been doing here on this show, iterating over lots of RPG books and manuals. Good show. I guess that's about what we need to do today. We could look at index cards tomorrow, but I think we'll not. I've got more things to do because I did not get up early today, so I've got to get back into it. But I do want to play Vagxanadu tonight, so I hope a lot of people will join us for Vagxanadu if you're interested in a retro fantasy gaming adventure. I'm just gonna see how far I can get into it. Okay, so BGD has comments here. BGD says the core mechanic for Fated Edge could exclude metacurrency, but then metacurrency could always be added into different worlds on setting specific bases appropriate to the tone of each. You could do it that way. Yes, that could definitely be the case. But also, Cortex, and this is what I'm thinking about, Cortex doesn't use that metacurrency in that basic action resolution mechanic, but it still uses a metacurrency to activate other abilities and do other things. So I've got to examine that over here as well to see, okay, now how, because I don't really understand the flow of the metacurrency in this game because I haven't played it. I played Fate, so I understand the flow of the metacurrency. I've just analyzed this for its core action resolution mechanic. I don't understand how it makes the metacurrency flow. So it might still be necessary for other parts of the system, but we will see. Trey says, morning, what dice is the base? The dice is are the Fate dice that we talked about. We talked about them extensively last week. So what we're doing is we're rolling, I'll show you the distribution. We are rolling 2 dice that display 0 to 5s. Oh, right here. I've already got it up. Stop screen sharing. So this is our roll. In adventuring conditions, we are rolling 2 dice that can generate numbers between 0 and 5. So that means it's either a D6 or a D12. And then we are always taking the lowest value on the edge dice. And that is generating numbers 0 to 5 in this particular distribution. So this was the subject of major analysis last week on last Tuesday. and how I came up with this particular distribution. So that means that our skill, when you take your ability score and then you add your skill, if one's required, then that's a rather large chunk. That's your large range, right? But then the random element is rather small. The random element is the 0 to 5 elements right here, 0 to 5, only 0 to 5. So your skill may be 10, 8, 10, 12, 15, your skill, your ability score plus your skill. That could be 8, 10, 12, 15. The random element is 0 to 5, and it's much more likely that you are rolling close to your skill than you are rolling far away from it. It's unlikely you're going to reach up and touch the 5, right? So that is a large known quantity range, smaller and constricted random range. There was another thought that I just had when I was saying that. Oh, now, of course, this does mean that it's going to require custom dice. Actually, there is a way that you could make this using just standard D6s, which is fantastic. So you could make edge dice out of D6s by just making the 6s into a 0. There, you got edge dice. But on the other hand, probably we'll have to have custom dice. So everything's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. But at the moment, I'm thinking I'll take that trade-off. What is the range of the target numbers? So the range of the target numbers, we'll look at this in more detail probably next week. The range of the target numbers are, I was working with this extensively yesterday. Actually, no, all last week. Difficulty and range. So here, because I'll tell you how I got to this later in probably next week. But here is our range of target numbers. They range from 0. Oh, they range from 0 being trivial, very easy, 5. Hard is 20, easy is 10, and then nearly impossible is 40. So these target numbers range from 0 to 40. Actually, I guess I can go ahead and show this right now. So this is how I was working this out. And we'll look at this in more detail next time too. Hey, Chaos Incarna, welcome. Good to see you. Let me take this down and I'll put this up because I was trying. The way I derived all the target numbers was by taking a look at this. I increase here's. So if these are my task difficulties, 0 to 40, and then my ability scores, which we'll look at character ability scores later. So that's what we'll probably get into next time. Or if we're not, we might get into more levels of action actually. But here are the ability scores. So average is 5. Gifted is someplace between 5 and 10. Once you hit 10, you're extraordinary. Then you get into the truly exceptional range. Then you get into incredible. And then probably this was supposed to be a 20 right here, where you become something like godlike in your ability scores. And then your proficiency levels over here are 2, 5, 10, and 15. So 15 should be very rare. And then you've got a non-adventuring bonus over here, which is flat 5. So I designed these by saying, let me see if I can find my note on that real quick. I don't know exactly where my note was, but it was, so it should be something like, what was I saying? I was saying that, okay, if you have an average ability score, so your average ability score is 5, and you are trained in some skill, and it's non-adventuring conditions, so you get another 5, you get plus 5. So you should be able to do task 15 skills. So 15 is moderate. So average people who are trained in non-adventuring conditions should be able to do moderately hard tasks without a problem. That's where I started. Trey says, so stat plus skill plus 0 to 5. Yes. It's stat plus skill if relevant. Now, you're not always going to have a skill. You only have a skill if it's relevant. So some skills will not apply. You're not always adding a skill. Plus 0 to 5 in non-adventuring conditions, plus your bonus die. So if I'm not adventuring and taking all the time in the world, I would only get plus 5. Just wrapping my head around the stats. Yes. If you are taking all the time in the world, you can get plus 5 because of the edge dice. Now, in non-adventuring conditions, you can still find reasons to make it easier than you still make it even easier, because every situational bonus gets you plus 2. So if you end up with 3 other situational bonuses, you're taking all the time in the world, and you're working in, if you're an alchemist, an extremely well outfitted alchemist lab. Well, that'll get you another bonus of plus 2, because there's your advantage. Not stat rolls. Well, yeah, it's not your basic action and resolution mechanic in adventuring conditions is your ability stat, your ability statistic, plus edge dice. And if you have a relevant skill, then you add that. All right. Well, I think that is it for now. I've got other things to do because I woke up late, and I do want to do Vaxanadu this evening. And so I've got, about, 6 or 8 hours to try to attack here and get a whole bunch of other stuff done. I'm sore because of the running, and now I still hear this pouring down rain. So I don't know. I might not be able to go for any type of walk or something like that today. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed it. Sort of look into at least what I'm thinking about right now as far as this goes. So that's what I've got. I look forward to seeing you on Discord, and then also tonight for Vaxanadu, we will go on a retro fantasy adventures. So I will. So that's a good question. Like wondering if the ability should be knightly virtues. You could build that out as like for Rabivania, because we've talked about should your attribute scores be something that relies more on the theme of the game. So that's interesting, especially if you're doing Rabivania. So that's interesting. We can talk about that later. But anyway, all right, everybody, have a great day. I'll see you around this evening for the game. Later.